In recent years in Europe, we've witnessed the rise of a lot of far-right and nationalist movements, which have gained ground in a lot of European states. How do you interpret this, and how concerned are you that the far-right is set to make very big gains in the upcoming MEP elections?
These European elections are really going to be crucial because they decide about the way, the direction in which way Europe will go. And we see the nationalist forces that want to go back to nationalism, erect borders and divide Europe. And this is not the way forward that we should be going. There's other directions also up for choice. The status quo that the big parties are advocating for, just continue as everything is. But we Greens are saying we need to change something. We need to make sure that Europe actually fulfills its promises for everyone in Europe.
The European Greens have been consistent in their stand against racism and have fought back against anti-migrant sentiment, which again is growing across all of Europe. But do you feel that the parties, maybe such as your own, might need to do more to understand the concerns of ordinary people in this conversation?
We absolutely need to watch out that Europe delivers for everyone in Europe. And I think the issue of having a social Europe is very important, because right now what we have is freedom of capital and whatever, and that's all very nice and fine. But you also need to ensure that we have social minimum standards everywhere in the European Union. Right now we have rules for how much a state can spend, but we don't have binding rules for social targets, and that needs to change. And I think this is absolutely crucial for the future of Europe.
Do you see a middle ground that can allow Europe on migration? Do you see a middle ground that can allow Europe to sort of both show compassion while also understanding concerns of maybe some people who genuinely feel that their communities have changed too much because of the globalized world that we're living in?
Well, there is asylum seekers, refugees who need our help, who are fleeing from war, from persecution, and there we absolutely need to help. And right now, many member states are simply letting those people die in the Mediterranean, and this is not European values. This is not what we need to stand up for. So there we need to provide search and rescue. We need to provide help. On the issue of migration, which is separate from refugees, there of course you can look at what's needed, you can target that or say that much is fine, this much not. But when there's people who are fleeing from war, who are fleeing from political persecution, we need to help, and we cannot allow people to die in the Mediterranean.
The European Greens Manifesto stresses the need for measures aimed at tackling climate change, stopping plastic waste, pollution, and many other proposals related to the environment. While obviously most people would agree that they're important issues worth addressing, the crucial question is who's going to pay for them. Is it possible for us to come up with policy that sort of doesn't place the burden on ordinary people and that can actually get maybe companies and governments moving in this direction?
Absolutely. Actually, climate change is really a social question. It's the poorer people who are affected most, for example, by the worst air pollution that is being even increased with climate change, by extreme weather events like we've seen in Malta. I mean, if your business gets destroyed, then you need to have the means to rebuild that and make yourself more resilient against those extreme weather events that are going to be more frequent, unfortunately, with climate change. So we absolutely need to see climate change as a social issue as well. But what is important is that we really build our economy on the environmental question. Right now we're allowing China to build batteries for electric cars, to build solar power technology, and it should be Europe who does that. We need to have the technology, we need to have the advantage, because then we're creating jobs as well, and we're creating the prosperity that we want to have in Europe.
What do you think is the biggest obstacle to us actually creating these technologies and pushing these technologies as a European Union?
I think the biggest problem that we have with tackling climate change is the political will, because we know what measures should be taken. We know of the economical benefits also of having an ecological and social transition of our economy. But big businesses clinch to the past. They want to hang out to their past successes, not realizing that they need to innovate in order to stay on top of things also in the future. And governments who are timid and don't want to move, but it's really about our common future. It's about the planet that we live on. So we need to act fast, and we know what to do. We just need to do it.
Another of your proposals is fighting for tax justice. As you know, Malta is the financial service is very important to Malta. significant amount of tax avoidance done through Malta. Are you proposing tax harmonization at this stage, and if so, how can we implement such a measure and while at the same time ensuring that small countries like Malta without natural resources and maybe very big industries can still remain competitive within the EU?
I think one of the biggest problems we have is tax evasion. And there we need to close the loopholes and make sure that all companies pay their fair share. Right now, we're expecting the small bakery shop in the street to pay more taxes than an international, online, super big company. And that is not fair, and I think people understand or see this social injustice that is created. So it's very important that we close the tax loopholes, and for that we need European cooperation, because if one state does it alone, then you're going to suffer. But if we're all going to do it together, then we create tax justice. I'm very confident because there's a lot of tax money being lost, and that's being taken away from, for example, renovating schools, from better education system, from better transport systems, for example, or also from protection against extreme weather events. So it's money that's being lost to all citizens, and it's really just unfair that big companies pay less taxes than normal people. So it really needs to be addressed, and we've seen important advances, but again, it's also there a matter of political